My street's the next left. Right here. Mister, you just passed my street.
Just sit back and relax. We're going for a little ride.
Good morning, class. My name is Mr. Smith.
I grew up in New York, and theater was the medium I loved, and acted in plays at school. And then when I got to college, I was a chemistry major. My parents always wanted me to have the avocation of theater and the vocation of either medicine or law, and I could not separate my avocation from my vocation, so I decided to pursue theater. Went from college chemistry to Columbia School of Theater Arts and studied theater directing under the mentorship of Joseph Papp. It was a great time to be with Joe and, of course, New York Shakespeare Festival in the Park, which I worked on for several years. Knock Knock by Jules Feiffer. I directed at Trinity Square. They wanted to move that play to PBS, but they wouldn't think of me to direct it. They wanted a film director. And of course I was hurt and disappointed and thought that it was time for me to make the move into film. I applied to the American Film Institute. It was a very competitive program. They accepted 24 directors, and 4 of us came back to make a thesis film. My thesis film won the Alfred Hitchcock Award. It won many film festivals. It was in the New York Film Festival. It reached a lot of people. My very first feature after that thesis film was a feature called Independence Day with Kathleen Quinlan and David Keith. It got a very small release. It did not do well. And I was out of work for almost a year after that film. But Pauline Kael of The New Yorker saw a video of that movie, wrote about it in New York Magazine, saved that movie from obscurity, and basically saved my career. And that was a year after I made the movie. I think the qualities that helped me enormously moving from theater to film was working with actors, because I was very comfortable with actors. I loved working with actors. I didn't fear actors, but I was uncomfortable with the mechanics of filmmaking. I was uncomfortable with the camera, the use of the camera. There was no video when I started, but I soon found that you can quickly pick up the mechanics, but the comfort zone of working with actors, the knowledge of Stanislavski and Meisner and improvisation and when to use it, what's actable, what's not actable, the difference between saying more energy or more, can you do that, can you be angrier, as opposed to motivations and objectives. All of that I was comfortable with, and it helped me enormously. Lawrence of Arabia certainly was a film that I would say changed my life. I just saw The Martian, and certainly Gravity does that kind of epic, wonderful movie in a different way. But I did love Lawrence of Arabia. I also loved The Godfather. Then started to read about the making of The Godfather, and it was riddled with the most awful problems in the world. So these films are not problem-free. I use certain films I did for instruction sometimes for the fellows at AFI. And one scene I pick is a scene from The Substitute where Tom Berenger is speaking to the class. I only knew what I had read about gang kids, and I had to do extensive research, and I had to do it with, at that time, the gang unit of the police, and they would take me to parks at 2 a.m, and I would then go and talk to gang kids, and it was very scary. And when I look back on it, the only thing as I tell my students now is, you were so focused on telling the truth and being authentic and doing your work, your research, before you ask anybody else to come along on the project. And if you're not going to do stories about what you really know about, then you have to really find out everything you can about the subject of the movie you're doing. School Ties, for me, is about somebody who feels completely different. I think it applies to anyone who feels different and wants to fit in to another group. And that group is very appealing for whatever the reason is. In the case of School Ties, that group has money, they're entitled, they're successful, their families are successful, and David, who comes there, is none of those things. And I felt that way about a lot of groups I joined. I went to a college that only had one Jewish fraternity, and I joined that fraternity, but I certainly was interested in the others that didn't accept Jews. I remember going through fraternity rush and walking into a room, and on that room there was a swastika flag, and I was aghast. And they said, "Oh, we do it just for the colors, like the Confederate flag. We have the Confederate flag, we have the swastika." And I was appalled. I was not a religious Jew, and there was no overt anti-Semitism that I could see. There was no Jew you down like School Ties has, or there was no overt. And these people who had that colorful flag, I thought I was very innocent and they seemed innocent. It seemed for them, it just was a colorful flag. There was a definite naivete back when I went to school. That it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist with a Confederate flag either, for that matter. So that's what School Ties was about for me when I accepted the movie. We're here to discuss School Ties, and I'm Robert Mandel, the director. I sincerely hope you enjoy the film.